This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
One morning I woke up and I was convinced that I was booked in to get a Spanish mud facial. And,
wow.
And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to go get this Spanish mud facial. And on that day, I was also being moved from one section of the hospital to the other. So when I started to get moved, I thought, oh, that's right. I'm going for my Spanish mud facial.
You're like, how exciting.
Yeah,
it's happening.
yeah. Which, didn't eventuate.
So sad. I heard that, it was through Nicole said that you'd woken up. This was only maybe a few days after the car crash, and you had woken up and I guess your brother was there and you were sort of in and out of consciousness and you just like looked at him and were like, I got 21 meaningfuls. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
I heard from my family that I had woken up and I recounted that I had 21 meaningful conversations, which, for a door knock, like that would be a quite phenomenal number of good conversations to have.
Which I love, like, even this was a scary time. You were, we were all like not knowing how you were doing and what was going to happen after your car crash and everything. But then just hearing that you were literally just in there, just literally dreaming about door knocking.
Yeah.
So we knew you were definitely still Amy.
Yes, yeah. That like bits of my brain was still like sparking and like connecting to like meaningful stuff that was going on. And because those early days I can't remember. And I was just asleep for a lot of the time. And, my family told me I've said all sorts of things while I was sort of slowly coming back to life.
Just coming up with new plans to nationalise everything in
Yeah,
your sleep.
yeah.
As your brain healed.
Talk about the Greens, that bunch of idiots.
Is there a more disgusting and vandalistic and deliberately ignorant political party in this country?
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
Well, look, I should probably introduce you properly. This week, it's Emerald here, but I'm co-hosting with Dr. Amy MacMahon, Socialist, Renter and Greens MP for South Brisbane. Tom is away, so Amy's joining me. We are Serious Danger Now. This is a podcast about green politics in Australia. It's not an official Greens Party podcast. It's made possible with the help of the Green Institute and produced by Michael the Griffin. Amy, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.
Last episode, we had you on episode 58. I went and had a look. It was like early last year. So you're about due for a trip back onto the show.
Yeah, definitely. We had a robust discussion about Olympics at that stage.
Yeah.
And a lot has changed and moved on from then, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, we were talking about the stadium, which of course now the stadium demolition is no more, the Gabba rebuild proposal. But is East Brisbane State School definitively saved or
No. The government have said that they still intend to do some upgrades to the Gabba Stadium and have said, well, we don't really know how that's going to impact the school. So they haven't been able to guarantee the long-term future of the school. They have said the school won't be closed on the timeline that we had initially announced, which suggests that at some point the government are still planning on closing down this school for the sake of the Gabba Stadium. And they could be saying, okay, well, whatever happens with the Gabba will guarantee that the school stays and whatever plans need to accommodate the future of the school. But that isn't the case. Labor still have this state school on the chopping block.
Well, the fight continues. This week we're going to have a chat about a couple of big things that have been happening this week, in particular what's been going on in Israel's war on Gaza, the university encampments that are happening in solidarity with Palestine. You've been down to one at UQ. And, the big brave Labor MPs who are standing up against their party's own gas plan. Before I do that, I just want to thank our new patrons. We have Jules, Spal, Philip, Ella, Matt, Is It Kath, Tommy, Tony, Melissa, Shiley, and Helen. We have a bunch of new patrons, which is very nice and exciting. It's just $3 a month. If you want to support the show, it helps us pay Mike's wages and keep the show going. And you get access to bonus content. I wanted to as well. I mean, we were sort of having a chat about the the things you were saying in those first few days after your car crash, but just quickly check in on how you're doing, Amy. You've been back at work for about a month after a pretty serious car crash, and you had, a head injury and, as I understand, like an injury to your shoulder, and you're sort of still doing rehab, but you decided to just jump back in because we couldn't keep you away. Or
Yeah. It's been a real time. Spent a little bit of time in hospital, and then a fair amount of time sort of resting and recovering at home after a car crash. And I sort of took the minimum amount of time that the doctors said I needed to stay at home before I could come back to work because there's a lot going on. And we're about to launch into a state election campaign. So I'm feeling much better. I've still got a little bit of recovery ahead of me, and still some sort of lingering impacts of some of the injuries, but mostly just feeling immensely grateful that the accident wasn't worse, that my recovery has gone well, and that I was able to get really incredible care at the Princess Alexandra Hospital. And yeah, very lucky to have my family and friends around me to help ease through what has been a terrible time and very difficult, but yeah, immensely grateful to be back at work.
it's very good to have you back. I mean, obviously behind the curtain a little bit, like we worked together in Parliament, and you came in and you just got like so many snacks because you're like, so it turns out when you're sick, people give you snacks. If anyone wants snacks, I have so many.
I actually have beside me is one of the boxes of snacks that I've been slowly sort of making my way through. But very kind of lots of people to drop off some delicious snacks to me. Although
I know you were saying like you were getting flowers and thank you notes and everyone was being very lovely, including even some of the MPs who normally are not exactly lovely to you. And I was like, we should have put a timer on how long it took maybe from your first day back in Parliament for them to just recommence with their yelling and completely dropping all pretense.
Like it happened within a day. Like the morning I got back to Parliament was really a strange experience because everyone was so nice to me. Like people were patting me on the back, people were stopping me in the hall. One of the members gave me a kiss on the cheek in the chamber. So it was really a different kind of experience to what Parliament is usually like for the Greens, which is extremely hostile. But that afternoon, I gave a speech about housing, and it was like, here we're back into it, and people were yelling out, people were saying shame and giving us a hard time. And I thought, okay, here I'm properly back now.
I mean, surely they just needed a like as soon as you gave that first speech, probably they were just waiting for an opportunity to switch back into their old mode.
Yeah, that's right. To give the Greens political party a hard time.
The Greens political party.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and of course, like you've got a pretty big year ahead. It has been. Obviously, it's been almost 4 years. We have fixed terms since the last state election, and South Brisbane was by no means an easy win. A lot of people didn't think that we could do it. It was a huge breakthrough when we actually won that seat from former Deputy Premier Jackie Trad. Like that was a really significant kind of Labor heavyweight to knock off. And coming up into it this time, because of the way that the LNP directed preferences on their how to vote card last time, that helped some preferences flow to you, and there's questions this time around whether like not having those preferences means it'll be harder. So you have a pretty big fight ahead of you, but I also think a few things have changed since then. Like we now have Griffith. I mean, how are you feeling about going into that fight?
Yeah, I'm excited to sort of get stuck into the campaign. We've been out door knocking, we've been out chatting with people at just sort of busy intersections where people are congregating, and we organised a series of barbecues and public events for me to go to once I got back from leave. So I had a chance to connect with people, and it's been going really well. It's been really lovely to be able to reconnect with people. But yeah, we do have a challenge ahead of us. It's not a safe seat. It's a very marginal seat, and we know we're going to need to fight really hard to hold on to South Brisbane. At the same time, there's this incredible opportunity for us to pick up more seats, and even in areas surrounding South Brisbane, starting up big campaigns to get out and talk to people. And, the feedback that we're getting is that people are feeling pretty unhappy with the Labor government. A lot of people are bringing up the housing crisis. A lot of people bringing up cost of living. And sorry, this is just my dog here coming to say hi.
Oh, buddy.
So yeah, we've hey
buddy.
He wants to go for a stroll outside.
I see.
So yeah, we've got this incredible opportunity to pick up more seats, but one of the keys to that is holding on to the seats that we already have. So holding on to Maiwar and holding on to South Brisbane, so we can build up and have a block of Greens MPs in Parliament who will really be able to bring the fight to both Labor and the LNP, who have left everyday people behind in favour of the banks and the mining companies and the property investors and the property developers.
Well, I know it's been I think it's made a huge difference having you in Parliament. I think that the electorate can see that, but as you say, it's not a safe seat. So definitely, if you're in Amy's electorate, please help her campaign. We'll maybe do a little bit of a chat about how people can help out in the call to action. But shall we get into chatting about Labor and their new little gas plan?
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
The Prime Minister's shaking off a backbench backlash.
You can't get to net zero through wishful thinking. You need to get to net zero by making sure that you have that pathway there.
The federal government's pathway includes gas.
So this is from The Guardian. Anthony Albanese is facing an internal revolt with Labor backbenchers pushing back against the government's support for new gas production. The ABC notes several of these backbenchers are facing fierce challenges in their seats from the Greens, who have labelled the government climate frauds in response to the announcement. This, of course, is the government's new future gas strategy analytical report that they released this Thursday. Have you seen the report or kind of seen much of the coverage around it and the response?
Yeah. I've seen that Labor has come out with this plan to continue gas up until 2050. They're framing it as a transition to renewables, despite the fact that we know that gas is one of the worst contributors to climate change and emissions.
You need the fossil fuels to transition out of the fossil fuels.
Yeah.
That's just logical, Amy.
It's very convenient for the fossil fuel companies that they're actually still required as we try and decarbonise. And we know that if we have any chance of combating climate change, we can't be opening up any new coal and gas extraction if we're actually going to seriously address. And in Queensland, we have a wealth of fossil fuels, and we have a state government that is just continuing to approve new coal and gas. So feeds into this future gas strategy at the federal level. But yeah, this plan has been widely criticised by lots of groups, obviously a lot of climate and environmental groups, but also by Labor MPs who are in marginal seats where they're threatened by the Greens, where they know that people are an interest in having a genuine plan for how we're going to decarbonise.
Yeah. So this plan, as I understand, the big issue, the top headline is that it commits us to approving new gas or opening up new gas resources in Australia, not only to 2050, but even potentially beyond that. And 2050 being the net zero commitment that the Labor government has made. Obviously, even that, as we know, is inadequate to meet our obligations on the Paris Agreement. But even if we put that aside and we're like, okay, net zero by 2050, that's it, we're going to do it. How the fuck do you meet net zero by 2050 when you're still approving new gas? Well, they say it's going to change over time. So we're going to approve all of this new gas. We're going to export a bunch of it. That's the other thing that this strategy, it commits Australia to continuing to export gas overseas. So even though it's couched in these terms of improving gas availability and affordability for Australians as part of this quote unquote transition, we're still shipping off most of our gas overseas. So we barely have enough here while we build new renewables. And then it says, but over time, we'll need to offset and abate emissions from gas. And so it relies on all these abatement measures and offsets. A lot of the time, as we know, offsets are bullshit. And to reach net zero, it commits $12 million over 3 years to, quote, provide regulatory and administrative certainty for offshore CCS projects. So it is also buying into, using public money to buy into carbon capture and storage, which simply doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Carbon capture and storage is very controversial, unproven. There's not any evidence to say that is something that could actually work. And so, Labor is saying, we're going to have all this gas on one hand and we're going to have these fake offsets on the other side, and that's how we're going to meet our emissions targets. But one of the things that Australia loves to do, and the state Labor government here in Queensland loves to do, is to basically discount anything that we're exporting and anything that's going overseas, and saying, well, we're going to do a great job here domestically, but don't worry about everything that we're shipping off overseas, even though the climate impacts are going to be felt here just as much as if that coal and gas is burnt somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fallacy of just a total reliance on domestic emissions targets, as we know. But going back to these Labor MPs who have stood up. So it seems like within a day or two of this plan coming out, there have been, at the time of recording, I think there's 6 backbench MPs plus the Assistant Minister for Health, Jed Kearney, who have said that they don't support at least aspects of the plan, or have released statements kind of opposing it. But they range. It's always funny to me the way that these statements of opposition are worded. For example, Kate Thwaites has said that the frustration is, quote, about the fact that the way it's been handled and presented does not reflect the work the government is doing. So the issue isn't that the government actually supports new fossil fuels, which it does. It's that the strategy kind of lays that bare, or it's oh no, this makes us look bad when we're not that bad. And it's but you simply are, clearly. Yeah. This is just a messaging problem. It's not actually an environmental problem or a technical problem. This is just a problem with the way that we've talked about it. Yeah. Michelle Anandaraja said, and this was used in a lot of headlines, of course, quote, I feel like I was blindsided by this announcement and would have preferred more consultation to improve my understanding of gas in our future energy mix. So it's the government, I'm sure this must be a good plan, because my Labor Party would never do any sort of, the type of climate vandalism that Scott Morrison's government was known for when they released their gas-led recovery plan. That was bad. I know this couldn't be that bad. I just wish that they'd explained it to me a little better. Yeah. And I think this is the kind of double think that Labor MPs have to engage in all the time to have an outward pretense of caring about the environment, caring about climate change, and caring about decarbonisation, while at the same time still approving coal and gas in the background. Still supporting these industries 100% and exporting all this fossil fuels offshore. They have to try and carry this hypocrisy in their minds all the time. And when something like this comes out, where it's very clear that the Labor government continue to support fossil fuels well into the future, it just kind of, the curtain is pulled aside and we can see what's actually going on. It must be exhausting having to, hold that much cognitive dissonance in your mind. And not least of all for the MPs in those seats that are the most threatened by Greens. Josh Burns was, I think, maybe the first MP or certainly one of the most significant MPs to come out against this. He did this interview on ABC Radio where he was like, we don't need more fossil fuels. We need to be transitioning to renewables. He said he, quote, didn't get into politics to be a support mechanism for the fossil fuel industry. He said he's not there to be a rubber stamp. He's really, really standing up to, to the government for the people of Macnamara, where his seat is obviously under grave threat from the Greens. Now, I'm curious, Amy, from your experience taking a seat from a Labor MP who was widely considered to be an MP like Josh Burns, who, stands up for the progressive left and, against the bad things that Queensland Labor were doing in government and represented her community in that way. Do you think that these MPs coming out and just putting the words on the record is enough for them to keep their seats? How'd it work out for Jackie Trad?
Yeah. Look, I think this community ended up feeling like they weren't being represented, they weren't being listened to, and could see that any MP involved with the Labor Party is still someone who is fully behind property developers, who's fully behind fossil fuel companies, and people could see through the hypocrisy and were sort of fed up with a lack of representation and fed up with not actually having someone on their side to fight for them. So we know that with big enough campaigns, we can be taking seats off Labor and the LNP MPs who actually aren't representing their communities. And there's huge opportunities as we head into the state election and the federal election, likely sometime next year, to get some genuine representation in. And what that means is that once people get a taste of what it's like to have Greens representation, what it's like to be genuinely represented, more people are going to want that. This is a real threat to Labor if they don't kind of drastically change a lot of their policies so they can be genuinely fighting for people. They'll be losing more and more seats to the Greens.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's an argument that presumably Labor are using to try and retain their vote that, well, it's effectively the same thing if you've got a Greens MP who will stand up in Parliament and, stand up for you and what you believe in, but not have the power to enact that in legislative terms because they don't have the numbers or they don't hold government. Maybe that's the same as having, a backbench Labor MP stand up for you, but they don't actually hold the keys to power. But, of course, that's only the case so long as the Greens don't have the numbers, and the Greens only don't have the numbers so long as people don't vote for them. It's that old saying, nothing changes if nothing changes. Like, if you actually want them to have the power, you need to vote for them. And what you see is when we do have the Greens gain enough numbers in Parliament to wield power, they will. And I note that I assume this was Adam Bandt was saying this, but it was reported the Greens, in being sharply critical of the policy, threatened to withhold support for Labor's legislative agenda if Labor backed a gas expansion. So they are saying they will use their numbers, presumably in the Senate, to block legislation if Labor is pushing ahead with new gas. And that is something that the Labor MPs are not, they're not proposing any, what are they actually going to do in Parliament to stop an expansion of gas? Nothing.
No. And I think part of what we've been able to demonstrate is even if we're not in government and even if we don't have a huge amount of kind of institutional power, the Greens are able to support communities on the ground and fight for communities and get incredible outcomes. At the federal level, the Greens fought for an extra $3 billion to go into social housing investment. At the state level, we've stopped the Gabba stadium expansion that would have definitely cleared out a school and a local park. And we can see Labor at different levels responding to the pressure that they're getting from the Greens and people who support the Greens, and at least some change in some of the rhetoric and policy that they're talking about. But I think that argument that the Greens won't be in government just doesn't hold up alongside what we've been able to prove. When you get Greens MPs in, you get people who are actually going to fight for you, will stand on the side of the community, will use the resources and power that you get from having an MP's office to get great outcomes for the community. And I think also a lot of people would look at Labor and go, well, we've gotten these Labor MPs in. What have they done for us?
Yeah.
What have the Labor Party done for us? So being in government alone isn't going to guarantee you that you're actually going to get good outcomes and that you'd actually get MPs that are going to fight for you. Actually, what a lot of people have seen, Labor got in at the federal level, and what has changed for most people? Housing is still extremely expensive. The cost of living is going up. There's no real action on climate change. Like, what's the point of having someone in government if they're not going to fight for you?
Yeah, and I think Adam Bandt tweeted something like, to the Labor MPs saying that they were blindsided by their party, or if they disagree with the policy of expanding gas so much, quit Labor and join the Greens. We'll see.
Yeah, across the floor. These sort of timid words that the Labor MPs have put out around the gas plan is meaningless if you're not actually going to use your power to try and change that policy, or to actually support the community in their fight as well.
Yeah. The people, they won't leave. What is threatening about divesting and want a piece? The problem isn't the protests, it's what they're protesting. It goes against what our country is funding. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. When I was 7, I learned a lesson from Cuban Eazy-E. What was it again? Oh yeah, fuck the police. All
right, let's check in on all the things that have been unfolding this week in Israel's war on Gaza. It does feel like, it's been a little bit of a turning point potentially this week, both for the worse and for the better in some ways. So a little bit of a summary. This is from the ABC. The United States has vowed to pause shipments of weapons to Israel, and global leaders have warned Israel against the invasion of one of the last parts of Gaza considered a safe zone where more than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering, of course, talking about Rafah. Israel began its incursion into Rafah after refusing a ceasefire proposal that Hamas had agreed to, saying it fell short of, quote, necessary requirements. The Greens have accused Israel of ignoring the interim orders of the International Court of Justice made in January to take all measures within their power to prevent the killing and harming of Palestinian civilians. The party's leader, Adam Bandt, said Australia must respond by ejecting Israel's ambassador until it abides by the ICJ's orders. Israeli forces on Tuesday seized the main border crossing between Gaza and Egypt in Rafah, cutting off a vital route for aid into the tiny enclave. And then on Friday, Australia voted yes, and the United Nations General Assembly emphatically supported a Palestinian bid to become a full member of the organisation by recognising it as qualified to join. Do you think that, does it feel to you as though we really are reaching, they've felt like multiple climax points since October 7th, right? But this week does feel like things are really ramping up with Israel's war on Gaza and the global response to it.
Yeah. I think this moment is an invasion of Rafah is so horrific that people can see now very clearly what has actually been going on. That this is just a whole-scale attempt at genocide, that there is nowhere else for people to go, that there are tens of thousands of children in Rafah who are now, they have nowhere else to go and under this horrific attack. And I think that alongside with the student uprisings and movements that have been happening around the world in the last couple of weeks, it does suggest that the movement is having some power and have been building and growing for months and months now, and actually being able to put pressure on those governments that are kind of crucial in supporting Israel's war on Gaza.
I think it's like it is fairly significant, surely, that even the United States is acknowledging that this invasion of Rafah is like a bridge too far. I think that Biden or is US officials have said that it's a red line, effectively, because, I would say that a line has been crossed well before this, but yes, like the acknowledgement that aid cannot reach, like people have nowhere to go, they can't access aid, and the purported objective of trying to destroy Hamas, and that you need to bomb this area where so many civilians are sheltering in order to achieve that objective. It just doesn't stand up to scrutiny, and even the United States of America are saying we are going to stop holding and stop sending, some of our bombs. Basically, they've said certain types of bombs or shipments of weapons that they suspect would be used to inflict really serious damage on civilians in Rafah, that they're not going to be sending those, and they may even introduce further embargoes, like now that, if a full-scale ground invasion continues.
Yeah. Look, like the states have been sort of crucial in this, and at any point they could have said, well, we will stop all shipments of weapons to the Israeli government, to the Israeli military, and could have stopped a lot of this a long time ago. So, it's promising to see this kind of change in the approach from the US government. It does feel like a little too little too late to actually make a difference. But it does feel like, for a lot of people, this is just beyond what could be acceptable.
Yeah. And it's, the US being such a major player, and of course these, as you're talking about, the student uprisings, the encampments on universities that began in college campuses, as I understand it, in the US, calling on their government to stop supporting Israel, that have now spread across the globe. They're in England and they're here in Australia as well. We mentioned them briefly on the show last week, but there's a pretty big one at the University of Queensland in Brisbane. And it is, it's fascinating to watch the same sort of like the weaponization of these student uprisings for the culture wars around Israel and Gaza and Palestine, particularly by the conservative media. Like, it seems to be only the conservative media want to report on this, and only in the most misleading and like just ridiculous ways. Have you been, when was the last time you got down to the encampment at UQ?
I got to go down on Wednesday and joined up with Michael Griffin and his team, who were running a free barbecue to feed all the students who are camping there, but any other student who wanted a free sausage in the afternoon. And it was incredible. Like, there are dozens of tents. The University of Queensland has this area called the Great Court, and it's sort of like a big grassy area surrounded by beautiful sandstone buildings. And, dozens of tents there, and tables and little areas where students can pop in to chat to each other or get information or share resources. And I felt so proud of the students there. Universities, and certainly the University of Queensland, can be very conservative and very much tied to fossil fuel companies, tied to weapons companies, getting a lot of money from big corporations. That kind of butts up against how they would like to present themselves in the world as sort of leaders of change. But in reality, we know that universities are, essentially tools for the status quo and tools for propping up big corporations. And the pressure that's being put on university by students is a kind of understandable reaction to that students are being taught the skills that they will need for how they are going to change the world, but they can see this institution, continuing to support, and in this case, continuing to support companies that are involved in making weapons that are going to Gaza and causing death and destruction. People can see a direct link between where they are coming to study and what is going on overseas.
Yeah. There's I might put a link actually in the show notes to, there's a piece by John O'Surianganathan about what the camp looks like at UQ, but he kind of lays it out as well why these protests are specifically targeting the university. The University of Queensland is directly complicit in the genocide of Palestinian people. It hosts a research institute for Boeing, a multinational aircraft and weapons manufacturing company that sells bombs and planes to the Israeli regime, and has had various collaborative relationships with a range of other military and surveillance companies. UQ has also been very circumspect about whether it has any direct financial investments in companies that support and profit from the invasion of Gaza, and its politics and international relations courses tend to reinforce colonial and Western imperialist narratives and frames of what's going on in West Asia and the Middle East. So he says it's an obvious local target for pro-Palestine protests. I know that the Boeing, so they have an actual Boeing center, I think it's called, at the university. Yeah. And there was a rally at some point this week that was kind of a march led up to that institute, and there were calls for UQ to withdraw its support for Boeing. Was a window of that institute smashed, or was that separate? Do you know about this?
Yeah. Like as part of that rally, there was a window that was broken. But from what I've read, it's not clear who broke the window and who was responsible.
Someone kind of just rocked up and then ran away.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of the media is doing is tying sort of any kind of conflict or any kind of a fight or something happening at the university, linking it back to this student encampment, even though the encampment have been saying, we have had nothing to do with a lot of those instances that the university have been talking about or that the media have been talking about. And, there's been a very deliberate attempt to make these students look violent and make them look illogical, rather than actually responding to the kind of demands that these student groups are making. And, this is a tactic as old as time itself to kind of paint those people who are opposing what the university is doing as the real troublemakers, and not at all engaging with the fact that, the university have all these ties with these big companies and have a huge amount of money that they're investing in a whole range of different sectors, and it's entirely likely that they would be investing in weapons companies as well.
Yeah, interestingly, so there's been the incident where there was a bollard that smashed a window there at the same time as a protest was being held. There's other things like, for example, a 23-year-old woman has been charged over public nuisance after allegedly breaking into a Jewish academic's office and urinating on the floor. But then I think even the university has released a statement saying the media is really conflating like the encampment and these completely separate issues, while the encampment and the organisers have really clearly said we don't know who's responsible, they're not involved in the encampment, they don't represent the encampment, etc. But of course, the Australian and the Courier Mail don't want to hear that.
Yeah, that's right. They would love this narrative that there's just these students that are causing havoc on campus, and feeds into the broader efforts of the media, who have either ignored what has been going on in Palestine or have have very kind of problematic narratives around who's responsible and around people who've been protesting against the war and against Australia's involvement as well. But if you actually go down and you chat with these students, this is an incredibly peaceful movement, and there's just students who are meeting each other, who are having conversations, and who are using non-violent tactics to try and get their message across to the university executive and levels of government as well.
Yeah, and I mean, meanwhile, so there's all that's reported is kind of violence, or that these students are just running amok across the university, or that these claims of anti-Semitism. So I'm not sure if this is kind of something that's happened on each of the universities, but certainly at UQ, there's like a counter-protest encampment of pro-Israel students. And I mean, there's been reports, I'm not sure specifically about from UQ, but in Melbourne, for example, of anti-Semitic abuse on campuses. And again, the organisers of the encampments have been very clear that it's not, this isn't a critique of Jewish ideology. There was a joint statement that came out from the 10 university encampments on Thursday. They said the protests had been peaceful and opposition to the state of Israel and Zionism as an ideology was not anti-Semitism. They said, quote, "Many of our student leaders of our protests are Jewish, and we see ourselves as standing on the shoulders of a long line of Jewish pro-Palestine and anti-war activists." I think now even the federal opposition education spokesperson, Sarah Henderson, has said that we need an inquiry. She's moving a motion next week, apparently, to establish a Senate inquiry into anti-Semitism on university campuses, which I just can't help but, it's a fine line, right? Where I'm like, I don't know. I'm not Jewish. I'm not on these campuses. I don't know whether there have been incidents of anti-Semitism, but I have to say that every time when I drill down into claims of anti-Semitism, it's almost always actually anti-Zionism. And the threat that people are saying that they're facing is purely discomfort about having an ideology opposed. And you just have to weigh that up against what is actually being protested at these encampments, which is, an unfolding genocide. And I can't help but see something like that as anything but a distraction from the real issue at hand, which is that, yes, our universities, alongside other institutions in this country, are funding and supporting a genocide,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the student groups, from what I've seen, are very mindful of those accusations, but also mindful of making sure that their movement and their student groups are genuinely anti-racist and are inclusive spaces and are spaces where you can critique the decision-making that's going on around these movements as well. And, have made things as peaceful and as welcoming and inclusive as they can. And that was definitely the feeling on the ground when I got to go to UQ, was that this is the space where they were trying to make it as welcoming as they possibly could, and make sure that their movement, was not discriminatory against any particular groups, but had this focus on fighting the university's link to the genocide that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how, I would love to see some sort of outcome from this, but even just the way that students have been mobilizing at these encampments is quite exciting, particularly, looking at UQ, which, as you sort of alluded to, has such a strong history of political mobilization of, student activism, looking back at the Joh Bjelke-Petersen era and the student response to that, quite oppressive regime, but that we had, radio broadcasts and rallies and protests and actions all happening in that very same space, right? Like in the Great Court and, around the Student Union happening at UQ. And it has felt like student politics and politics on campus has fallen short of that real kind of that level of engagement and political participation recently. And to see it coming back is kind of exciting in itself, but it is also, it's one of those things that it's like they're young people and they're students, and like it's always kind of going to get a little bit messy, and you probably have to be prepared for that if you want politics to be happening on universities. You have to be prepared. It's going to get a little bit nuts. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right that the sort of movements on campus have struggled for a number of years, and I think this is for the reasons that a lot of different kinds of movements have been struggling to get people involved, because people are having to work too much, people are under a lot of pressure, people are under cost of living pressures, universities aren't free. We probably would have seen much better activism going on when students weren't worried about being saddled with tens of thousands of dollars of debt, and students were much more capable and able to be able to take part in movements, to study alongside activism. But now students have to work. Like you have no choice. You can't be splitting your time in the way that we would want students to be when you're young, to be able to have these opportunities to get involved. But people have to work now, and people under all sorts of pressures. And we've seen the broader decline of people's involvement in politics. So this moment is quite exciting. It's exciting that there is this kind of hub of activity. And I think what we would hope to see out of the encampment at UQ and elsewhere is that there will be sort of new movements that will kind of flow out of that, and opportunities for students to meet each other get involved in other kinds of political struggles. And yes, universities have been these really exciting places of dissent and critique and mobilisation. And we look back on history, and I've seen a few of these squares floating around that have said, like, the students are always right. And when you look back on, the students who are mobilising against the Joh Bjelke-Petersen government in Queensland, the students who are mobilising against the Vietnam War, the students at UQ have been mobilising against the university's ties to fossil fuel companies, and now the students that are mobilising around the genocide. Like the young people have been at the front of a lot of these movements. And it's kind of an exciting moment that we're in at the moment.
Yeah. And so long as that remains true, that, the students are pretty much always onto something and are standing up to authority, there is going to be the parallel constant that they will face severe, attacks and persecution from the mainstream media and from institutions that will try to paint them as irrational, or even, in the States, for example, plant conspiracy theories about them not being real students and it not being a real encampment, whatever it is to discredit the cause, because, they know that this is a powerful movement. So definitely, solidarity with all of the students that have been involved with this, and also to see the way that Greens representatives in particular, and, I think even the Greens clubs, especially on campus, have been there feeding students and providing support. Certainly, I think that's a wonderful use of resources, and that's exactly the sort of thing that our representatives should be doing. So,
definitely. Get down to UQ if you get the chance. Go and chat with the students there. I think they will intend to be there as long as they possibly can be. We haven't seen the kind of crackdown that we've seen in the States where, in some universities where riot police have been sent onto campus to clear students out, and reports of violent tussles with the police. That hasn't happened at UQ, but there's always the opportunity for a crackdown on what's going on campus. And we know these universities aren't opposed to something like that if they feel like they need to sort of maintain a particular order. That there's definitely instances of security and police moving in on students.
It does seem like so far it's been fairly peaceful, but I know that, the group's been trying to get a meeting, trying to get the Vice-Chancellor to come down and meet with the encampment and talk to them, and they've only been offered kind of, selective closed-door meetings with maybe a couple of them, and they're saying that's not good enough, we want you to come down here and negotiate. So I suspect that that will be ongoing, and hopefully, they will come down and actually start to listen. But, yes, we can only wait and see, I suppose. All right. So thank you, Amy, for filling in for Tom this week. Definitely appreciate it, especially you spending your Saturday morning with us while Buddy the Greyhound is banging for a WALK. But look, if people want to help you get reelected, which you absolutely deserve, what can they do if they're in the Brisbane area to support your campaign?
Yeah, well, the campaigns are kicking off right around Brisbane and soon further afield around the state. And we are doing lots of door knocking and lots of one-on-one conversations with people out at the markets and events, and doing some phone banking as well. So if you would like to help us get some more Greens MPs into Parliament, these kind of one-on-one conversations are one of the most powerful tools for swinging votes, but also drawing people into the broader Greens movement. So we've got door knocks happening every weekend, and we'll be having a kind of big weekend of action on the 18th and the 19th, where we're going to be having some really big door knocks. We refer to them as mega door knocks, with a specific focus around renters and housing. So an opportunity to go and talk to hundreds, if not thousands, of renters about the Greens plan to freeze rents and give people a guaranteed right to a lease renewal. So if you would like to help us, please sign up. Door knocking can be a bit daunting at first, but you'll always get to go out with someone who's experienced and get some great training from other people who've been doing this for a really long time. So you'll get the skills and tools that you need. And it's one of the most inspiring parts of politics is the chance to get to talk to everyday people. And these conversations are incredible to be able to learn about what's going on in people's lives and the things that they care about, and then an opportunity to talk about the Greens' vision for actually fighting for everyday people. So, please join us at the weekend of action and the door knocks that we've got coming up. We'd love to have you on board.
Cool. Well, amymacmahon.com has got the volunteer and the donate links for folks further afield if you do want to support Amy's campaign. It genuinely, it is such an important campaign and seat, and we know that both major parties are going to be throwing probably a lot of money at it, so please chip in if you can. Otherwise, in terms of a national call to action this week, if you can keep supporting Palestine, go to a rally, have a look at this. There's definitely still solidarity rallies happening, I would say, each week in most capital cities. So have a look at, I think probably apan.org.au is a good place to look for actions and rallies and that sort of thing. But or get down to your local university campus and support the encampment there if there's one happening. Amy, where's the best place to follow you on socials?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. If you want to see what we're up to and what we're talking about, just look for Amy MacMahon, South Brisbane, and we're sharing a lot of the upcoming events that we've got for the campaigns on social media as well. So that would be a good place to go to find out what's coming up.
Sweet. Amy has great content. Highly recommend. You might get to see more photos of Buddy, which are always good. If you want to follow us, Serious Danger, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, we're at Serious Danger AU. All of the links, etc., are at seriousdangerpod.com. You can send us an email at hello@seriousdangerpod.com. And we'll be back next week when Tom returns. Thanks again, Amy.
Thank you.
Serious Danger Australia.